Welcome back. Freedom of speech in the digital age is on the docket as the Supreme Court examines state laws designed to put guardrails on social media companies. The two states in question, Florida and Texas, accuse social media companies of being left-leaning and censoring users who are on the political right. So should these social media companies be seen like newspapers and allowed to control their own editorial content? Or should they be seen like telephone companies, neutral territory as far as free speech is concerned? Here to talk more about this with me is one of Florida's top criminal defense lawyers, Eric Schwartzreich. Eric, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me.
Judge, it's my pleasure. Good morning and great to see you.
Thank you. Likewise. So everybody can remember, certainly lawyers and law students, the iconic language of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Doesn't that mean that the government should stay out of the business of speech, period?
Absolutely, 100%. That's exactly what it means. Congress, the government, states, any government agency. And the problem here is when the government is getting involved in telling social media, the law in Texas and the law in Florida, what they have to do to show opposing viewpoints of opposing political parties because the government or one side of the government wants that. That is infringing upon the First Amendment. That is exactly what the First Amendment is supposed to be protected for, to stop the government and from the government for having it say this is a viewpoint you're going to have. And the danger and the chilling effect of it is if these social media sites, if this law was to stay or if they were to pass, and I don't think it's going to based upon what just took place in the Supreme Court and listening to the oral arguments, that the social media companies would be forced with having to show both sides. So if they did something like start to show a pro-Jewish side, then they would have to go show an anti-Semitism side or put up stories about Hitler. If they want to do something against bullying or suicide, they would have to show both sides. It is a private company. It is like someone's home that they are being invited into, a digital bulletin board. It is private. I can kick someone out of my house if I want to kick them, or kick them out of my garden party, as you say, Judge, if I want to. The government has absolutely no right getting involved in this whatsoever.
Now, what you just said is what we call black letter law. Every lawyer, every judge, and all law students understand that. Where do the legislatures of Texas and Florida come in trying to interfere with this? Or is this just a political stunt so politicians can please the base and get reelected by doing something they know is going to be invalidated, and then they can say, well, we tried to protect your rights. It's those black-robed judges that stopped us.
Politics, as you know, Judge, make bad laws. This is exactly politically motivated. That is the motive here. Why are they doing this? Because the conservative side or a certain part of the aisle feels like their voice is being stymied. As you know, Judge, these laws were passed after we had January 6th, after Trump was banned, I believe, from Twitter at the time, now X, and conservative politicians wanted to use this as a platform. But that is exactly the point of what the First Amendment is all about and why the government should not be involved. The First Amendment, Congress, and now the state or any government agency should not pass any laws abridging free speech. Free speech is like air. It's a fundamental natural right that we all have. To put any chilling effect on it from the government and to have a knife, if you will, a proverbial knife in the hands of the government, slicing it, or even like with a paper, one single paper cut. The government is not supposed to be involved in that. Now, if you don't like what social media is doing, you don't like what Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or the big three, well, then people, they can decide not to go to those sites and go to other sites. It is up to the people to decide what sites they want to use, and a private business should be able to tell the government, you can't get involved. This is like a newspaper. It's an editorial function, as the Supreme Court has held, is justified. Is the issue going to be, is this a communication device, or is this like a telephone, or is this an editorial like a newspaper? And this Facebook, this social media, this Instagram, this YouTube, it is akin to the social media. It is not a telephone company. It is akin to a newspaper. And the government has no business in in getting involved in telling a private company what you're going to put on your sites. That is dangerous. That is chilling. It is scary for the companies, and it is scary for all of us, Your Honor.
Let me segue into a side issue here. Another case before the Supreme Court, whereby the Department of Homeland Security, under both President Trump and President Biden, has used a carrot and a stick to big tech, saying, we want you to suppress this, we want you to push that. If you do, we will not aggressively regulate you. If you don't, we're going to audit everything you have. Isn't that also the government putting its thumb on the scales of free speech?
Putting the thumb on the scales of free speech and committing what amounts to a crime of extortion. It is extortion to give this choice, to tell a private company, you're going to do this, you're going to espouse these views. We as people have our rights. We're smart enough, and we don't get enough credit from the government to decide what information we can take. All this information that we want, and we can decide on our own and decipher it. You might not agree, or you might not like some of the information, but more knowledge is power, and it is up to citizens to be able to gather that information. And the government, not at all, should tell any private company, any individual, what they're going to say, what they can't say, what they can't speak, how they can express themselves. The government, and according to the Constitution, according to natural law, has no place getting involved in that, Your Honor.
Eric, what a great conversation. Thank you so much. Good luck in all your work in Florida. The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government out of the business of speech, and you presented that case beautifully. I hope you'll come back and chat with us again, my friend.
Absolutely, Judge. I'm going to go take the Fifth right now, the Fifth Amendment, get out of here and go enjoy.
Well, you're in Florida, where the weather's nicer than up here in New York. Enjoy yourself.
And where this law came out of, one of the states. So it's great, but it's always Florida where this comes from.
Thank you, my friend.